I wouldn't let my manipulative ex-boss speak at my company's launch party, even though he claimed credit for my success. He threatened to sue for intellectual property, so I hired a lawyer and countersued. Some background: I'm Alex, a 32-year-old software engineer with a passion for AI and machine learning. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, the kind of place where technology was more science fiction than everyday reality. My parents ran a small bookstore, and while they didn't quite understand my obsession with computers, they always supported my dreams. I was that kid who was always tinkering with gadgets, taking apart old computers just to see how they worked. By the time I was in high school, I was building my own rigs and coding simple programs. It wasn't always easy being the tech nerd in a town that valued football more than computer science, but I knew I had found my calling. I worked my way through college, juggling part-time jobs and internships while maintaining a 4.0 GPA in computer science. It was during my senior year that I first heard about Technova, a rising star in the Silicon Valley tech scene. Their CEO, Marcus Blackwood, was making waves with his bold predictions about the future of AI and machine learning. Fresh out of college, armed with my degree and a head full of ideas, I landed an entry-level position at Technova. I was over the moon. This was my chance to work with cutting-edge technology and learn from the best in the business. Enter Marcus, my ex-boss and the antagonist of this story. Marcus is a 45-year-old tech executive with a reputation for being a visionary in the industry. He's tall, always impeccably dressed, with a full head of salt and pepper hair that makes him look distinguished beyond his years. His charisma is undeniable. When Marcus walks into a room, all eyes turn to him. He has a way of making you feel like you're the most important person in the world. When it suits his purposes. My first few months at Technova were a whirlwind. The pace was relentless, the projects exciting, and the learning curve steep. I was working 60-hour weeks, fueled by a mixture of caffeine, ambition, and sheer determination to prove myself. It was during a company-wide hackathon that I first caught Marcus's attention. My team had developed a prototype for an AI-driven data analysis tool. It wasn't perfect, but it showed promise. Marcus stopped by our presentation, and I'll never forget the way his eyes lit up as I explained the potential applications of our project. After that, Marcus took a personal interest in my career. He invited me to high-level meetings, asked for my input on strategic decisions, and even started mentoring me one-on-one. I was starstruck. Here was one of the most respected figures in the tech industry, treating me like a protégé. For the first couple of years, things were great. I was learning more than I ever thought possible, and my career was advancing at a pace that made my college classmates green with envy. Marcus seemed genuinely invested in my growth. He'd often invite me to brainstorming sessions, where we'd discuss potential new products and innovations. It was during one of these sessions, late one night after most of the office had gone home, that I first pitched the idea for my AI-driven project management tool. We had been discussing the challenges of coordinating large, complex projects across multiple teams and time zones. What if, I said, my mind racing with possibilities, we could create a project management system that doesn't just track tasks, but actually learns from the data it collects. It could predict bottlenecks before they happen, automatically reallocate resources based on changing priorities, and even suggest optimal team compositions for different types of projects. Marcus's eyes gleamed with interest. Go on, he said, leaning forward in his chair. For the next hour, I outlined my vision, sketching diagrams on the whiteboard and rattling off potential features. Marcus listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or suggestions. By the time I finished, I was breathless with excitement. Marcus stood up and clapped me on the shoulder. This, he said, could be a game changer. I want you to start working on this immediately. Assemble a team, whatever resources you need, you'll have my full support. I could hardly believe it. My idea, my brainchild, was going to become a reality. I went home that night too excited to sleep, my mind buzzing with possibilities. The next few years were a blur of intense work, breakthrough moments, and countless challenges. I assembled a small team of brilliant developers. There was Raj, a coding prodigy with a knack for solving seemingly impossible problems, Sarah, whose expertise in UI/UX design would prove invaluable in making our complex system user-friendly, and Tom, a veteran developer whose experience helped us navigate the trickier aspects of system architecture. Together, we tackled the monumental task of bringing my vision to life. There were moments of triumph, like when we finally got our machine learning algorithms to accurately predict project delays based on historical data. And there were moments of despair, like the time a critical bug caused us to lose a week's worth of work, forcing us to rebuild a key component from scratch. Through it all, Marcus was there, cheering us on and providing resources when needed. He'd stop by our workspace regularly, always full of enthusiasm and big ideas. Think bigger. He'd often say. This isn't just a project management tool, it's the future of work itself. His support meant the world to me, and I worked even harder to live up to his expectations. I was pulling 80-hour weeks, often sleeping on the couch in our workspace. My personal life took a hit. I missed friends' weddings, family gatherings, even my own birthday celebrations. But I was so caught up in the excitement of creation that I barely noticed. As the project neared completion, I started to notice a shift in Marcus's behavior. He began inserting himself more into the development process, often making last-minute demands for changes that would set us back weeks. At first, I tried to accommodate these requests, believing that Marcus's industry experience must be guiding these decisions. But as time went on, the nature of his interference became more troubling. He started talking about our project in interviews and at industry events, despite having minimal involvement in its actual creation. In one particularly galling instance, he gave a TED Talk where he presented our AI algorithms as if they were his own brainchild. I tried to convince myself that this was just Marcus being a good CEO, drumming up publicity for our work. But deep down, a sense of unease was growing. The final straw came during a board meeting where Marcus presented the nearly finished product. I sat in the back of the room, expecting to be called upon to explain the technical details of our creation. But as Marcus's presentation went on, I realized with growing horror that he barely mentioned my name or the contributions of my team. Instead, he spoke about how he had guided the development process from conception to execution, and how the idea had come to him in a moment of inspiration. I was furious, but I bit my tongue. We were so close to launch, and I didn't want to rock the boat. Plus, a small part of me still hero-worshipped Marcus. Surely, I thought, this was just a misunderstanding. He would set the record straight eventually. A week later, Marcus called me into his office. The sleek, minimalist space with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the San Francisco Bay had once filled me with awe. Now, it felt cold and intimidating. Marcus was all smiles as I entered. "Alex, my boy," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. "We need to talk about the future." He had a proposition for me, he said. He wanted to spin off the project management tool into a separate company, with him as CEO and me as CTO. At first, I was excited. This could be my big break. But then he dropped the bombshell. I would only get a 10% stake in the company, while he would retain 70%, with 20% reserved for future investors. I was stunned. This was my brainchild, my creation. I had spent years of my life bringing it to fruition, sacrificing my personal life, my health, and countless opportunities. And now Marcus wanted to swoop in and claim the lion's share of the rewards? But I don't understand, I stammered. This was my idea, my work. How can you take 70%? Marcus's smile didn't waver, but his eyes turned cold. "Alex," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "you need to understand how the real world works. Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution that matters. And who provided the resources for that execution? Who gave you the platform, the team, the funding? Who's going to be out there selling this to the big clients and investors?" He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Let's be honest, you're a brilliant engineer, but you're not a businessman. You need me to make this a success. 10% of a billion-dollar company is a lot more than 100% of nothing." I felt like I was going to be sick. This man, who I had looked up to, who I thought believed in me, was trying to steal my life's work. But a small, insecure part of me wondered if he was right. Did I really have what it took to lead a company? I need time to think about it, I managed to say. Marcus nodded magnanimously. "Of course, take all the time you need. But remember, Alex, opportunities like this don't come along every day. Don't let your pride get in the way of your future." I left his office in a daze, my mind reeling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversation in my head. I thought about all the late nights, the missed holidays, the strain on my relationships, all for this project. I thought about my team, about Raj, Sarah, and Tom, who had poured their hearts and souls into this work too. What would happen to them in Marcus's new company? As the first light of dawn crept through my window, I made my decision. I couldn't let Marcus take this from me, from us. I had to stand up for myself, for my team, for the integrity of our work. The next morning, I marched into Marcus's office, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. Marcus looked up from his desk, that same self-assured smile on his face. "Ah, Alex," he said. "I take it you've made your decision?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, I have," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm declining your offer. Furthermore, I'm resigning from Technova, effective immediately. The smile vanished from Marcus's face, replaced by a look of shocked disbelief. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then his face contorted with anger. You ungrateful little shit, he snarled, all pretense of civility gone. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? He stood up, looming over me. You think you can just walk away? That project is Technova property. If you try to develop anything even remotely similar, I'll bury you in lawsuits. You'll never work in this industry again. I stood my ground, even as my knees threatened to buckle. The core concept was mine, developed on my own time. I have documentation to prove it. You can't stop me from pursuing my own ideas. Marcus's face was red with fury. Get out, he spat. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. I left his office shaken but determined. I knew I was taking a huge risk, but I couldn't let Marcus take credit for my work any longer. I went straight to my team and told them what had happened. Their reactions ranged from shock to outrage to fear, but to my immense gratitude, they all expressed their support for me. We believe in you, Alex, Sarah said, speaking for the group. This project is as much ours as it is Technova's. If you're leaving, we want to come with you. Their support brought tears to my eyes. But I knew the road ahead would be tough. I can't ask you to risk your careers, I said. I don't even know if I'll be able to pay you. Raj grinned. Who said anything about pay? We'll work for equity in whatever you're planning next. After all, we know the true value of what we've built. With my team's support bolstering my courage, I spent the next few days wrapping up my affairs at Technova and preparing for the battle ahead. I gathered every scrap of documentation I could find that proved my role in developing the project management tool. Email threads, early design documents, even my personal notebooks filled with late-night brainstorming sessions. I also reached out to a college friend who had become a lawyer specializing in intellectual property rights. Over coffee at a small cafe far from the Technova offices, I laid out my situation. My friend listened carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. You're in for a fight, she said. But from what you've told me, I think you have a strong case. The key is going to be proving that the core concepts were yours, developed independently of your work at Technova. She agreed to take on my case, working for a reduced fee plus a percentage of any future earnings. It was a risk for her too, but she believed in me and in the righteousness of my cause. Armed with legal representation and the support of my team, I felt ready to face whatever Marcus might throw at me. But I knew we couldn't just sit around waiting for a lawsuit. We needed to act. Over the next few months, we worked tirelessly to develop a new version of the project management tool. We were careful to rewrite all the code from scratch and modify certain features to further differentiate it from the Technova version. It was grueling work, but it was also liberating. For the first time, we were building something that was truly, undeniably ours. We worked out of my small apartment, transforming my living room into a makeshift office. There were days when it felt like we were back in college, pulling all-nighters fueled by pizza and energy drinks. But there was an energy, a sense of purpose that kept us going through the toughest times. As we worked, we also began reaching out to potential investors. This was terrifying for me. I was an engineer, not a salesman. The thought of pitching our idea to seasoned venture capitalists made my palms sweat. But I knew it was necessary if we wanted to turn our dream into a reality. Our first few pitches were disasters. I stumbled over my words, got bogged down in technical details, and generally failed to convey the true potential of our product. But with each meeting, I learned. I watched videos of successful pitches, practiced in front of the mirror, and gradually began to find my voice as a leader. It was during our 10th pitch meeting that we finally caught a break. The investor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet, listened to our presentation with an unreadable expression. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You do realize you're going up against Technova, right? Marcus Blackwood isn't known for playing nice with competitors." I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. "We know the risks," I said. "But we also know the value of what we've created. This isn't just another project management tool. This is the future of collaborative work, powered by AI that learns and adapts to each team's unique needs." Janet studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "You've got guts, kid. And from what I've seen, you've got the skills to back it up." She pulled out a checkbook. "Let's talk numbers." That meeting was a turning point. With Janet's investment, we were able to rent a small office space and bring on a few additional team members. We named our company Innovate Pro, and threw ourselves into finalizing our product for launch. The next year was a blur of coding sprints, marketing meetings, and legal consultations. We had a few close calls with the development. There was a week where a persistent bug had us all ready to tear our hair out, but we pushed through. All the while, we were looking over our shoulders, half expecting to be served with lawsuit papers from Technova at any moment. But the lawsuit never came. We later found out that Marcus had been advised by his legal team that pursuing action against us could potentially expose Technova to countersuits and bad publicity. It seemed that, for the moment at least, he had decided to let sleeping dogs lie. Finally, after 18 months of non-stop work, we were ready to launch. We planned a big party to unveil Innovate Pro to the world. The night before our launch party, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. The subject line read, "We need to talk." Despite my better judgment, I opened it. The email was a mixture of congratulations and thinly veiled threats. Marcus suggested we come to an arrangement where he could advise Innovate Pro and protect me from potential legal issues. It was clear he was trying to worm his way into my new venture. I replied with a polite but firm response, declining his offer and assuring him that Innovate Pro had no need for his advisement. The next morning, just hours before our launch party, another email arrived, this time from Marcus's lawyer. They threatened legal action for intellectual property infringement unless I agreed to let Marcus speak at the launch party and publicly acknowledge his crucial role in the technology's development. Panicked but determined, I forwarded the email to my lawyer and focused on the launch. The party was a success, with tech journalists and potential clients showing enthusiasm for our product. However, the celebration was interrupted when Marcus showed up uninvited, demanding entry. I confronted him, firmly asking him to leave. He threatened me one last time, but Janet, our investor, overheard and intervened, embarrassing Marcus and forcing him to retreat. In the following weeks, with the support of our investors, we filed a preemptive lawsuit against Marcus and Technova for harassment and defamation. The legal battle made waves in the tech industry, with many others coming forward with similar stories about Marcus's behavior. After months of legal wrangling, we reached a settlement. Marcus and Technova had to publicly acknowledge that the core concepts were my intellectual property, pay damages, and cease all threats. Additionally, Marcus was required to attend ethics and leadership courses and mentor young entrepreneurs through a program overseen by an independent board. In the years since, Innovate Pro has thrived. We've expanded globally and even gone public. I've made it my mission to mentor young developers, helping them navigate the tech industry ethically. Looking back, I realized that standing up to Marcus was about more than just protecting my intellectual property. It was about standing up for myself, my team, and the principle that success should be earned, not stolen. To anyone facing a similar situation, stand your ground, document everything, seek legal advice, and believe in yourself. Your ideas, your work, and you have value. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.